Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Dustina. This is Spiritual Boujee Astrology, and we are going to take a look at the astrological transits of August 25th to August 31st. What a curious energy we're going into this week, my loves. Oh, yes, very curious indeed. Now, we're just coming off of the black new moon in Virgo, the first new moon. If you listen to me for a little while, the way that I explained this one previously, was like, it's a hellacious pre-show, but not hellacious in the sense of like you're going to see fireworks. I meant the energy behind it. It's like having Kendrick Lamar at the pre-show before the Super Bowl. Therefore, the eclipse season is the Super Bowl. We just had our first new moon in Virgo. And if you listened to the previous episodes, what I talked about is that new moon, not only was it a dark moon, in the sense of what it's being called as that black moon. But given the other aspects of the sky, there were hidden parts of that new moon. And there was a multitude of ways that people had things come up. One, you went out and you did something unexpected. You did something out of the box. You did something out of the norm. You did something very, very exciting because that new moon was in a square to Uranus. But for other people, it was a heavy mental energy because, again, Mercury rules our logical brain. And what came through in that new moon was some of the things that we could feel ourselves working against. I don't like the way this feels anymore. I don't like this connection anymore. I don't like the vibration. I don't like what's going on in the energy. I don't like this. And even if before you weren't thinking about something you did not like, there was something hidden coming up to the surface, coming up to the forefront of our mind. Because again, Mercury rules our logical brain. Mercury rules Virgo, and we're coming off of a new moon in Virgo. Now, one of the things I said in the new moon video was that for some people, whatever is coming to light, whatever is coming into the focus, whatever is coming to the surface, for some people would have an effect that would be felt within days. Days, specifically this week, Monday, Tuesday, most exact. For some people, there are going to be things that happened that are going to have an immediate effect, immediate responses, immediate awareness, immediate challenges, immediate vibrations setting in going into the first of this week. However, for other people, it is going to take an entire lunar month. For those that don't understand that, lunar months are either going to be new moon to new moon or full moon to full moon, depending on the lunation we're talking about in this particular aspect. We're talking about a new moon, the new moon in Virgo we had over the weekend, to the next new moon in Virgo, the one that will actually be an eclipse, and that's going to be September 21st. That is the lunar month we are discussing. For some people, the vibration of this week will also impact the vibration around the next new moon in Virgo in the days that follow it. So I want people to be very, very aware. I don't care how big or how small the situation, pay attention to what is unfolding this week because it is giving you a glimpse, it is giving you a glimmer, it is giving you an idea as to the actual unfolding in that second half of eclipse season, which is again September 21st, whenever we have the new moon in Virgo eclipse. Now, why do I keep saying it that way? Because some of y'all, the minute you hear there's going to be change, you go into panic mode. I don't like change. I don't want it. This sucks. Listen here, fixed signs. And don't take that as any other way, because I usually make fun of the fixed signs whenever change is a part of the conversation. Change is necessary. Change is necessary. We are going through a transitional vibration throughout the rest of August, which is literally just this week, and all of September. Transitional vibration changes are coming. But sometimes whenever I talk to some of you, you'll be like, well, nothing happened. Nothing happened today. Okay, really? You just stayed in bed all day? Well, no. What's work? Cool. What happened to work? Nothing. Just work. Nothing happened with your coworkers. No memos went out. Nothing happened with the boss. Nothing going on. Nothing. You just sat there and talked to nobody. Well, no, we had stuff. Pay attention to the stuff. Pay attention to the memos. Pay attention to the words. Pay attention to the announcements. Pay attention to the contracts. Pay attention to the things that are coming to light at the first part of this week, because the theme will get repeated following the second new moon in Virgo, which will be exact on September 21st. Put a pin in the details. Somebody says they're going to change something, that they want to do something, they got a different idea, put a pin in the details. If you have an idea, you've had something come through, an epiphany over the weekend, the mental energy did not shut off, because for some people, you mentally just spinning like a hamster, and that hamster is ready to fall over dead. And some of us, it did fall over dead, and the mental energy turned into mental exhaustion. You know where you stand. Some of y'all still have not slept at the time that you're listening to this recording. Or if you had, it's been like a cat nap. Like, I didn't sleep all weekend. Mercury rules our logical brain. New moon in Virgo. Virgo's ruled by Mercury. Mercury rules our logical brain. It doesn't shut off. For other people, it was mental exhaustion. And it did shut off, because there was nothing left to do. There was no more buffering. You had no other choice. Control, Alt, Delete. Something had to shut off. Take a little bit of cough syrup. Take a nap. You know where you've landed. For some people, the vibration over the weekend, it was relief. Oh, I finally can do something. I've completely detached from other situations that I'm no longer responsible for, and I can try something new. Can I do it all at once? Absolutely not. It's going to take me weeks to understand. And this week that we're going into is a very curious week, because there's so much bleed over in a multitude of ways. Bleed over from previous situations and previous vibrations and previous decisions that have brought us to where we're at now. And we're going to slowly start to feel a measuring stick against our current place, our home life, our relationships, our work life. There's a new measuring stick coming through energetically. And for some of us, the things that we've done over the course of the last year, and there's a couple reasons why I'm saying year, and I'll kind of break them down here in just a second, but for the main part, things that we've done over the last year, we're now in a different vibration with them. And many of us are starting to measure whether we made the right decisions or not. Some of us are measuring the people that got us to this point were so helpful for so long. But then other parts of us are starting to feel like, what used to be seen as helpful now feels like it's controlling. What used to be seen as helpful now seems like it's a little bit spicy. It doesn't feel the same. There's cuts in those words. There's cuts in those tones. And we can feel ourselves measuring, taking account, taking note. Some people are in our lives for a reason or a season. And for a lot of people right now, we are either going to start to grow the reason from this point forward, or we are going to start to measure who's going to continue, because for a lot of people, the season of their presence is done. Now we can't immediately go into that mentality. So what starts to happen is universal tests. And from this point forward, the bleed over is exactly that. It's tests. Well, Dusty, why are you saying bleed over? What's causing the bleed over? The planets, obviously. Now, I made a mistake in a recent video, and I fully admitted to it afterwards, and that was the last little bit of the Mercury retrograde overlapped the very first part of Mars's retrograde. There was a 3-degree window where it was specific. People were going back to, well, I've been doing this since December. We made the decision in December. We did this back then. I'm like, you mean when Mars was turning retrograde? And now at the end of the Mercury retrograde, we're getting tested? Oh, look at that. That's so interesting. Now let's talk about the other half of the Mars retrograde. Mars retrograde ended at 17 degrees of Cancer. And starting this week, Jupiter, who's already in shadow, is now going to start crossing over the areas where Mars was last September, because that's when he entered shadow. September, October, more so October, actually. He entered Cancer in September, October, right after the Venus ruled Libra eclipse. We went into Mars in shadow. Now we're going into Jupiter, not only in shadow, but now crossing over Mars's point of shadow. And again, Mars ended its retrograde on February 23rd at 17 degrees of Cancer. So things from last year and this spring. But he's not the only thing that we're looking at. Saturn is retrograde. I've been talking about this one for a while. And Saturn is in the very last week of being in Aries. He started in Aries the last week of May. So that week right before Memorial Day for the Americans that celebrate this one. I don't know everybody's holidays, but just humor me. The very last full week of May was the start of Saturn in Aries. It was the start of his pinky toe dip. By the time we get to next Monday, the start of September 1st, quite literally, Saturn will retrograde back into Pisces. And he is the other reason I'm saying the bleed over. Because for a lot of people, the full steam ahead energy was new responsibilities, new processes, new procedures were given, were initiated, were issued in late May and early June. But if you listen to me for a while, I already told you the decisions of June led into July. July and August was the Mercury retrograde. All of the decisions of the new that we took on going into the summer directly impacted that Mercury retrograde, and that Mercury retrograde's after effects are directly impacting eclipse season. And we just had the eclipse season pre-show. Saturn is about to retrograde back into Pisces. Now, any time a planet goes back into its previous sign, there is a bit of unfinished business. For a lot of people, the elements of this week will trigger our awareness of needing to go back. Because again, this is the last full week of Saturn in Aries until Valentine's Day. There's something really funny going on with Saturn because this year it's like holiday stuff and Saturn go hand in hand. So we're going to have Labor Day for the Americans here. Labor Day is September 1st. That is when Saturn is going to go back into Pisces. Saturn's retrograde will end simultaneous to a Mercury retrograde right around Thanksgiving. So this is November timeframe. And then Valentine's Day of next year, February 14th, that is whenever Saturn is going to come back into Aries. So there's something about Saturn and holidays right now that it's like, it's making it very easy for me to pinpoint things in people's heads. Like holiday, this holiday. Yes. This one right here. Yeah. Saturn is messing with our holidays. Because I even just said the Memorial Day thing. He turned retrograde like right after 4th of July. Like he's messing with holidays this year. Oh, Daddy Saturn. Anyways. There are things in the vibration that are going to trigger Saturn this week. And the way that manifests in us is it's triggering thoughts of age, thoughts of responsibility. It is triggering things with the bosses, with CEOs, with members of government, with political leaders, with our lawyers, with social workers. There's something about a responsibility in some way. Some of us, we have to take a responsibility. Some of us are going to be having to talk to other people that are considered the more adulty or adult in the conversation. And some parts of us in these conversations are going to make us realize again, there are some levels of unfinished business. Now, for some people, we're not immediately going to be dealing with the unfinished business. It's just the awareness in the triggers. Now, considering this is the last full week of Saturn in Aries at this time, there can also be a lingering vibration in a lot of us that we don't want to be responsible for something or someone anymore. And by the end of the week, there are going to be a lot of people making certain decisions that for some were triggered in that new moon, that we don't want to share space, that we don't want certain people to be responsible for us or a part of some level of responsibility that we are dealing with in that moment. Now, others of us, we're going to be dealing with something with our elders because Saturn represents the elder. And we will see certain things about an elder shift. Some of them, it's going to have to do with their minds. Some of it, it's going to have to do with their bodies. We're going to see where they previously had certain energy, where certain things in the body start to click it back. And where we previously had a little bit of energy, come on, grandson, let's go outside. Let's throw that ball around a little bit. I'm just making everybody like really old granddad's age in that mentality. That they will shift their focus into something different, or their energy is going to shift into something more sluggish. And that's going to be something we will start to see once we get into September. But what we're seeing in the moment this week is their physical responses are not quite as energetic as previously held, as previously seen, as previously understood. And if there is something going on with that grandparent, with a parent, aunt, uncle, whoever, that can also be the trigger towards unfinished business. Because the thing about Saturn in Aries is Aries is the start of the zodiac sign. Saturn rules time, karma, age, responsibility. There are some people that helped us get into something new, shift our focus into something new, that ultimately they will not be a part of the long-term picture for one reason or another. And if you see something going on in your elders this week, that's a clue in to some unfinished, unresolved situations, unresolved things in health that are going to be coming a part of the focus once Saturn goes back into Pisces. And that alone can bring a lot of emotions, but we can cross that bridge when we get there. Now, Saturn is not necessarily the ruler of this week. He's not the highlighter of this week. In my personal opinion, the highlighting planet of this week is Venus, especially when it's the way that we start the week. Venus is going to change signs. And whenever I show you the charts here in a little bit, you will see the very first things are all around Venus. Now, the good news is Mercury leaves shadow this week. And Mercury itself will put new charge into things. And there will be some things that we started to do back in early July that we wanted to take forward, but for one reason or another, the retrograde created delays that now we're able to pick back up on them. But we have a different idea, a different mindset, a different concept as to how we're moving forward with it, because some people are not continuing with us. And there is a very big awareness as to moving in the shadow and not taking everyone along for the ride. I only want to share my space with the new vibration. I don't want Joey riding alongside of me in the car as I go to 10 different places, whoever Joey is. I don't have a Joey. I'm just picking out names. And today I'm picking on a Joey. I don't want them coming with me. I want to do this on my own. And the first inklings for some people of doing something different, doing something on our own with the idea that afterwards we're going to have a different result is a big part of this week. And it coincides with Venus and what she's doing. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Not everything with Venus is going to be fun. A lot of it's going to be work. But Venus is bringing results, solutions, consequences for some, but more along the lines of resolution and being able to take something into a different level of appreciation, given the way she's following behind all the other planets in the vibration. And at least the first half of the week, Venus is the star. She's a morning star right now. Quite literally, outside in the mornings, you can see Venus in the sky. She's the morning star right now. But when it comes to the transits of this week, a lot of them are very much encompassed around her energy. And she alone is giving a big focus in the shape to, again, a lot of the things that we will see come a month from now. And that's not all going to make sense in the very beginning. You just got to trust me. The transits will speak for themselves as we continue. So we're going to start the week. We're going to get into anyways, we're going to get into Monday. Now, this is the first transit of the day, and Venus is involved. Venus is at 29 degrees of Cancer. Now, if you are familiar with the sign of Cancer, Cancer is what's known as a cardinal sign. What are cardinal signs, Dusty? They're shit starting signs. We start shit when we go through cardinal signs. And Venus, wrapping up her trip through Cancer, is in a sextile to the moon, which is wrapping up its trip through Virgo. But over the course of the next hour, specifically at 9:08 a.m. Central Standard Time, the moon is going to go into Libra. And for a lot of people, once the moon goes into Libra, we're going to have at first a very big awareness that something needs to come to an end because, again, Venus is in Cancer. Venus is in the moon sign. Well, the moon is now in Venus's sign. That a lot of us are going to be either in a very big energy of like, this has to get wrapped up so this can start very, very quickly. And I want to be honest, whenever it comes to Monday morning, it's a busy morning. There's a lot of lunar activity as well as planets changing signs. So there's going to be a lot of movement, a lot of busyness going into Monday morning. So if you didn't see something in particular during that new moon in Virgo over the weekend, the human effect is we're probably going to see something on Monday morning. And that's why I said, if you don't see fireworks over the weekend, that's not a bad thing. They'll come rather quickly. Voila, the moon is now in Libra. And again, there is something that needs to start up, move forward while simultaneously wrap up, come to a close, come to an end. But that ending has a showcasing, like I'm wrapping up the final touches of something because I want to bring it to light. I want to bring it into focus. I want to bring a more dominant energy into the sky. And that is a big part of the vibration that we are in once we get into Monday morning. So let's go back to this chart. Okay. Venus, again, it's going to be wrapping up its trip through Cancer all day long. The moon is going to go into Libra. And as soon as the moon goes into Libra, it hits this opposition to Saturn. We're in a chain effect all through the morning. The Venus moon sextiles between 8 and 10 a.m. The moon hits the opposition to Saturn between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Busy, busy, busy. We're going to have a lot of ping pong effect situations. Not everything will be connected all at once. Now, when we get into the 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. time span, so I'm going to bump this 2 more hours, the moon is going to go through its trine from Uranus. You can see Uranus right here, 1 degrees, 24 minutes. It is hitting the opposition to Neptune, 1 degrees, 30 minutes, very, very quickly. There will be some things that feel exciting, but also confusing at the same time. There will be one person that's all about this, like, yeah, this is a great idea. I love this idea. Where the person sitting next to him going, I don't get it. And you just need to be prepared for both. There will be some people that are very confused by the vibration and they don't want to accept responsibility, or they don't believe it's going to work, where other people are just super excited. Remember, Uranus and the sun are still in their square over the course of the weekend. That was exact over the weekend. Sorry, I went blank for just a second. It was exact over the course of the weekend, but we're still separating from it right here. So there's still a vibration towards like expect the unexpected. And this moon hitting the trine to Uranus adds an extra emphasis to it. Now, in this same hour, I'm not moving anything. At 11:27 a.m., I still got it at 11:30. Venus now moves into Leo. Venus moves into the sun's sign. There is something that needs to be seen, aesthetically seen, something that needs to be brought to light, something that needs to be showcased. The moon is now going through Venus's sign as Venus has changed into the sun's sign. And everything the moon is doing through Libra is to add layers to what is starting to take shape over these first few days of the week, most specifically Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And we're not even at noon yet. It's a very busy Monday morning for a lot of people. All right, now between 11:30 and 1:30 p.m., so I'm not going to move it. I'm just going to keep it right here. The moon will also go through a trine with Pluto. Now, this is going to be more exact right around that 12:30 time span. So I bumped that. You'll see it a little bit closer. Here's the 1 degree 44. Here's Pluto at 1 degrees 53. So we're a lot closer right here. Now, anytime we have to deal with something with Pluto, there can be stuff that's going on behind the scenes, below the surface. There can be triggers of fear, triggers of frustration. And if we have some kind of trigger of fear or frustration or anger, take that with a grain of salt. And again, this can have layers, considering over the next 48 hours, Venus will hit a full opposition to this Pluto, but the moon is in Venus's sign. This can have layers of foreshadowing to it. There can also be things going on with the plumbing whenever it comes to Pluto. We don't want to skip on the plumbing, or stuff that's been going on behind the walls, below the surface, that can also be frustrating and triggering. So I've had a lot of people over the summer, you've had like influxes of like mold on top of plumbing issues. And that's going to be some of the Pluto stuff too. I wanted to bring that up to the surface because I haven't actually talked about that specifically on the podcast before, but more and more people are starting to dealing with the effects of something that was not there before. So I am very sorry, guys. It happens. All right. It's a very busy morning. By the time we get through the lunchtime hour, things are somewhat dying down. Like, we don't have as many exact transit. That doesn't mean that we're not busy. The human effect is we're going to be busy with some things all day long. We're trying to get something going. We're trying to get something started. We're trying to get something seen differently. And once we get into the evening time, specifically between 7:50 and 8:09 p.m., I got it at 7:30, so it's close enough for government work. Here is Saturn, 0 degrees, 25 minutes, hitting the trine to Venus, 0 degrees, 24 minutes. This is talking to the elder. This is talking to our boss. This is talking to an authority figure, getting guidance, getting understanding, serving something around our passions, around our desires, that is getting recognized. This is fire to fire energy. Yes, Saturn is retrograde. So in some ways, it's like, again, baby, I support you, but I can't do it with you. Like, I don't feel up to something right now. And that can be a big part of the vibration. Sometimes grandpa's not going to have the same type of energy. And I was already saying that. And some of us can recognize that based off of the energy of Monday evening. I just don't feel right. I don't feel the same way, but I'm so proud of you. There is appreciation whenever it comes to trines. Now, most people will see it as appreciation. Every once in a while, the Saturnian side of somebody is judgmental, even if it's meant to be positive. It's more along the lines of like, oh, you thought that was okay to wear, but they really meant it as like a good thing for some reason, but for whatever reason, it comes out of their mouth backwards. Some compliments can be shrouded in judgment with the Saturn trine in that evening time. For some people, it's going to be like, because I'm not responsible for something else, it's allowing me to do something. It's allowing me to take something forward. And that flow in the vibration just feels like confirmation in so many different ways. Now, when it comes to Monday, this is our last exact transit, that Saturn Venus trine. It is the most exact, again, between 7:50 and 8:09. However, we're building up to it all day. We will continue to be in it all evening. It does not have to happen at that exact minute for it to make sense to somebody. So there can be some judgment, sure, with the Saturn stuff, but there can also be guidance, permission, and again, supports of passion with what we're starting to take forward, with what we're starting to showcase, given the Venus in Leo energy. Venus likes to be in Leo. She likes to show off a little bit. There's nothing wrong with showing off every once in a while, and she's going to show off. Anyways, moving along. We're getting into the 26th. We're now getting into Tuesday. The moon's going to be in Libra all day long. Our first transit is actually going to happen in the morning time, so between 8:30 and 10:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. I got this now at 9:30. This is when the moon hits its exact conjunction to Mars. There is a commitment. There is a meeting. Now, for some people, anytime the moon hits a conjunction to Mars, it is disruptive. But Mars is in Venus's sign. And again, Venus is trying to show something off. Venus is trying to do something new. So for some people, the moon in Mars is a new commitment, a new action, a new reaction, a meeting. Now, for some people, Mars meetings are disruptive. That means they're going to be combative and potentially argumentative. Sure, it's a Mars thing. But Mars in Libra isn't necessarily argumentative. It's a little bit more focused and a little bit more fair-minded in a lot of ways. But given, again, this conjunction is happening in Venus's sign, and Venus is going to be doing a lot of things throughout the day that we're not quite seeing exact right here, but we're in the buildup to. I'm more likely to believe the moon Mars is a pivotal disruption versus a chaotic disruption. Pivotal disruption is like the perfect TED talk that completely changes your opinion on something. And there can be something about Tuesday that the meetings that are being had, the connections that are being made, they change your opinion about something. Be open-minded to the vibration and what is shifting as we go through the day. So we're going to keep this going. Once we get into the afternoon, Venus is going to do her first little thing, and that's going to be its sextile from Uranus. This is felt the most exact between 3:56 and 4:15 p.m. So what I got right here is I've got Uranus at 1 degrees, 25 minutes. Here is Venus at 1 degrees and 23 minutes. Now, during this same time span, the moon is starting to build a square from Jupiter, and this is going to encompass both the Venus transits while the moon is hitting that square. So I'm going to keep this going. Again, between 3:56 and 4:15, Uranus hits the sextile to the moon. Neptune is going to hit its exact trine to the moon between 5:16 and 5:35. So I've got, here's Neptune 1 degrees, 29 minutes. Here's Venus 1 degrees, 29 minutes. But this is also the start of Jupiter's exact square to the sun. Jupiter hitting the square, not the sun, I'm sorry, the moon. Jupiter hitting the square to the moon feels like permission. It feels like guidance. Jupiter is the doctor, the guru, the teacher. It can have to do with wealth and abundance. There can be things around prosperity. Financial gains can be tied to the Jupiter position of things. Not everybody recognizes that sometimes, but it is true. There can be something about an action or a reaction that we're going to be taking forward, considering we have Uranus going through the sextile to Venus. So there's expect the unexpected. There's excitement in the air, Uranus vibration. Neptune is going through the trine. There is potential, blinded by potential. There's a lot of romanticism with Neptune and Venus right there. There's a lot of mysticism with Neptune and Venus right there. There can be something that captures our imagination. And sometimes once you capture someone's imagination, their imagination goes wild with potential. And this can be a really fun energy for a lot of people, and one that really kind of swirls around and grabs people very, very quickly. And I'm going to again remind you, pay attention to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe, because this gives foreshadowing to the effects and results that come through in the second new moon in Virgo that we are a month away. Actually, we're 3 weeks away from now. 3.5. September 21st. We'll say 3.5. It is giving guidance. It is giving foreshadowing. It is giving ideas. And I cannot harp on that one enough. There is a lot of potential in this energy, a lot of hopefulness in this energy, a lot of excitement in this energy. And if you get grabbed by something that feels so hopeful and so exciting, it's going to be really hard to ignore just how good something can feel. So I want people to enjoy that vibration. Okay? Enjoy the vibration if it's going well for you. There's not a whole lot of this that speaks to things going unwell, except for if we have unexpected revealings based off of people doing things that are about lying, cheating, fraud, deception, because Neptune's vibration can speak about lies, fraud, and deception. And some people won't necessarily anticipate their bullshit coming to light, and they will not feel Venus in Leo is positive. They're going to be seeing the consequences of Venus in Leo. So for a lot of people, it is results. For other people, it can be consequences. Be aware of how the vibration is hitting you, and be aware of Venus as your chart ruler or your time lord going through this week. Okay. We're going to keep it going. In the evening time, between 9 and 11 p.m. Central Standard Time, so I got this now at 9:30, Mercury is going to go through a sextile to the moon. This isn't heavy energy. Now, I will say Mercury is now in a new area of the sky. He's now officially out of shadow, giving perspective of something new, giving a different idea, giving a different kind of go ahead, a different type of like problem solving, confirmation, conversation. If we do it this way, if we make it look this way, if we work out this detail, we can make it go this way. There's something very conversational back and forth. And again, Venus is still in that trine from Neptune. It is still in that sextile from Uranus. She hasn't let go of that vibration. We still have Jupiter's influence hitting that square to the moon while Mercury is in the sextile. So the potential, the mental potential of what we start to go through and what we're talking about and the back and forth in the conversations can be magnanimous, or it can be spiraling troubleshooting of like, what is going on? What is happening? Why does this feel so heavy? How did this even happen? Where did this information come from? Because some people just had something exposed. Depending on where you're at karmically, and considering Venus is also starting her opposition to Pluto. Now, it's not exact yet. It actually goes exact right after midnight. It's going to be how we start Wednesday. And for some people, the energy that starts to set in is going to be how we overcome a fear. Again, because we're trying to do something positive. But if you're dealing with the consequences, it is how you're going to face a fear. Be aware of that. Okay, we're going to keep it going. Again, Mercury's in the sextile to the moon until roughly about 11 p.m. This is how we're going to wrap up Tuesday. We're now going to go into Wednesday. The moon is going to be in Libra all through the overnight hours. And right after we get into this midnight area, between 12:38 and 12:57 a.m. Central Standard Time, I've got it at 12:30. It's close enough for government work. Here is Venus, 1 degrees, 50 minutes. Here is Pluto at 1 degrees, 51. Now, again, I kind of referenced this in that last part of Tuesday evening. I'm now more focused that this is going to be a Wednesday vibration, that Venus hitting the opposition to Pluto. This is not a fun transit by itself, but considering all the other things that we have going on, I'm not quick to go into the negative vibration. I feel like a lot of Venus right here is her results, her solutions are how we face a fear. And that's what I'm leading with Venus hitting the opposition to Pluto. This is how we face a fear. This is how we overcome frustration. This is how we overcome our trauma. This is how we overcome the past. And I do feel like with the moon being in Venus's sign, Venus has a lot more potential here of overcoming fear, overcoming trauma, overcoming adversity. And that could be a big part of this. The negative side of Venus opposite Pluto is things like SA and the potential of SA. And I don't want to ignore that. because there is those potentials of something going too far, with people being more grabbed by the Plutonian side of this versus the Venus stuff. The other thing can be the power struggle dynamic of consequences. Now, if you're going to go out on Tuesday, you're going to come out like I do Tarot Tuesdays every once in a while. And this week, I actually have a Tarot Tuesday this week. Some people are going to want to come out for something like that and hit the bar scene. And if that's one of the things that you want to do, don't drink a whole lot. That's my honest answer for Tuesday going into Wednesday. For some people, it's going to be that. For other people, it's going to be like, how do we fix our problem? How do we handle this frustration? How do we deal with this judgment? How do we deal with our fears being confirmed? And that's going to be more if we're leaning in the Plutonian side. Some people, you're going to be out on Tuesday night, you're going to round a corner. And even if you're having a great night, it's like you see that one person and it triggers insecurities and it's a test. Because parts of this week, we have that bleed over energy and there's going to be tests. Venus hitting the opposition to Pluto can be a test. Now, again, this is happening just after midnight going into Wednesday morning. It can be a part of the Tuesday evening vibration for a lot of people. For more, I think it's going to be some of the energies that we deal with throughout the day on Wednesday, given the way that we're going to do with the rest of the lunar transits. So we're going to keep this going. Venus at the opposition of Pluto, like I said, right after midnight. For some people, that's going to be a weighted energy in the overnight hours. Some of us are going to have a hard time sleeping. Other people, you're going to be dealing with some things throughout the daytime. The moon is going to hit an opposition to Chiron. Now, this is going to happen between 12 and 2 p.m. I got it at 12:30. Here is the moon, 26 degrees, 2 minutes. Here's Chiron, 26:49. So we're just before we start to really get into this. Bump this to 1:30. It's going to be a little bit closer. Yeah, there you go. It's a little bit closer right here. Whenever it comes to this energy, Chiron is usually something that's very, very neutral, or again, wants solutions, wants to take activity. Considering Chiron is in Mars' sign and Mars is also in Libra, this takes me back to there's a lot of focus on Venus and her energy. There's a lot of focus on what the new vibration of Venus and Leo has brought forward. Because for a lot of people, there has been something new that has come into light, that has come into focus somewhere between Monday and Tuesday. And whenever the moon hits the opposition to Chiron, there's a little bit more of establishment here. There's a little bit more focus here. And again, there's something about this is a solution. This is how we fix something. But for other people, we can become aware of a wound, not our wound, but like somebody else's wound. And not immediately knowing how to fix it, but understanding that wounds have been made. And that's the Chiron part. Again, Chiron's usually more of a neutral vibration. It's not meant to be heavy. And that's why some people, whenever it comes to Chiron, we don't immediately see it as the solution, because it's more talking about how it impacts us in the effects of things. So be aware if we get to some part of Wednesday, especially in that lunchtime area, that we're talking about wounds, that we're talking about solutions, we're talking about how something makes us feel. But then after that, the moon's going to go void, and it's not really doing anything until the evening time. At 8:27 p.m., I got this now at 8:30, the moon is going to go into Scorpio. The moon is now in Scorpio. And once the moon arrives into Scorpio, it's a very different vibration. Venus is still hitting that opposition to Pluto. We just spent the last few days with the moon in Libra, the moon in Venus' sign. Mars, the other ruler of Scorpio, is also in Venus' sign. So for a lot of us, we're going to be dealing with some of the hidden effects of the new thing that we're doing, the new disruption, the new in the energy, but also deep, long-standing emotions. The thing about Scorpio is it is a fixed water sign, fixed emotions, things that have been there for a very long time. And sometimes we can see somebody doing something really, really well, but we still don't have great feelings for them. We still remember that they were a bully to us in high school. We can still remember just how much they sucked for a really long time. And we can be in this teetering energy once the moon goes into Scorpio of like, I want to support the new. I believe in parts of the new. I just don't believe in all the players of the new. I don't believe in everything that's going on. So there's some things that just don't sit well inside of us. There's something that's just not sitting well. And again, we've got these little instigative things of bleed over of we're doing new while also dealing with the old simultaneously, and things are just bleeding into one another, and blurring lines can make for a lot of confusion. But this doesn't feel immediately like confusion, but it does feel like hesitancy, not being in support of everything, not seeing eye to eye with everyone, not liking who's in charge of certain things, and just having emotional unrest deep within the gut that it's very hard to let go of. As soon as the moon goes into Scorpio, it's going to go into a square with Pluto. Now, this is kind of different because this is the energy that takes us from Wednesday into Thursday. This starts roughly around 11:30 p.m. on the 27th. It continues us into the 28th, into the next day, whenever the moon hits the square to Pluto. But the moon is in Pluto's sign. Pluto is retrograde, moving towards the moon. So there's something about understanding of fear, understanding of frustration, understanding a power struggle, even if we don't agree with everybody else's excitement and the way that they're dealing with something, if we don't necessarily understand what everybody else is like all hyped up about, there can be something about the other side, the things that's been going on behind the scenes, below the surface, that needs to be brought to the forefront. It needs to be brought into a conclusion in some way. It needs, but we don't get immediate conclusions. It's like the awareness of conclusion that we're not willing to accept. We need more data. We need more details. We need a few more things to change. And this can be something, again, that triggers fear, triggers frustration, triggers insecurity, but it can also be something that speaks to accepting the need to change, accepting levels of transformation. Pluto, as much as it can be something traumatic, it can also be something where we overcome the trauma. And a lot of people miss out on the Plutonian side of things being like the butterfly effect of life. And what I mean is, like, we go through cycles in our life where we must be the caterpillar that crawls. Then we have to go through our areas of the dark night of the soul and cocoon. And then after we've had so much internal transformation, what comes forth afterward is the butterfly. It is the butterfly. That's what I mean by the butterfly effect. I'm not talking about the weird memory thing. Some of us need to mentally understand why certain things weren't working before and why we're going through some level of transformation, emotional transformation, physical transformation, why change has been needed at this time. The moon hitting the square to Pluto, as much as it can be about questioning of a trauma, questioning of abuse, questioning of the past, it can also be about accepting the change. Now, again, this conversation, this type of energy, this transit in particular, it starts 11:30 p.m. on Wednesday. It takes us into Thursday. So this is still a vibration that is going on. And I don't want to negate the fact that for some people, this is going to be a late night energy, because as soon as the moon wraps up its square from Pluto, and we've had that understanding of like what's something that needs to change, something that needs to transform, or an overcoming a fear and an overcoming a trauma, or facing a fear and facing a trauma, dealing with something triggering. The moon is also going to go through its square from Venus. Now, this is going to be felt the more exact between 1:30 and 3:30 a.m. So I got it now at 2:30. Here is Venus 3 degrees 8 minutes. Here is the moon 3 degrees 0 minutes, or just before it goes exact. Well, remember, Venus just hit in opposition to Pluto. And for a lot of people, Venus was either the results of something, the challenge of something. And now we need some kind of extra detail. We have some extra layer, some extra fathoming, some extra insight, some extra person being told what happened when Venus hit that full opposition to Pluto. For some of us, we got to go tell our friend that Girl, I saw him. I saw him with his new girlfriend. It was so crazy because I thought that I would feel a certain way and I didn't feel that way at all. And there can be something about like overcoming and feeling validated and feeling vindicated and feeling better in a result of something. For other people, again, because we have this bleed over because of past and present coming all together, you have been vibing and you're going to have that conversation with somebody. You got to talk to your best friend. You got to talk to your person. You got to talk about like the way something made you feel in the negative way. Some people, we're going to have some level of event that happens when Venus at the opposition to Pluto. And after we've had some time to rectify it in our mind, we have to tell somebody else. Now, are we telling somebody else all in the middle of the night? No, there is always going to be a human effect, and it's more likely to take place in the actual daytime of Thursday. It really kind of comes down to whatever you deal with in that Venus Pluto. For some people, it is going to be magnanimous of how we overcome a fear and overcome an obstacle. For other people, it is how we face something that triggers adversity, that triggers frustration, that triggers confidence. Venus is the star of the show for the majority of the week. Now we're finally going to start to break away from that. Oh, all right. Now, as we bridge into the actual morning time, not just these overnight hours, between 6:30 and 8:30 a.m., I got it now at 7:30, the sun, 5 degrees, 27 minutes, is going to hit a sextile to the moon, 5 degrees, 29 minutes. Now, by the time we get a sextile, we have a full glimpse of the moon starting to come to light, starting to come into focus whenever it comes to the daytime aspects of the sun hitting aspects to the moon. We can see the moon now. Can we see all of it? No, but we can see it. A lot of this vibration speaks to an awareness of something that needs to come into light, that comes into focus. The sun can be a part of the ego. What I'm looking at with the sun being in mutual reception with Mercury, what that means is these two are in a house swap. The sun is in Mercury sign, the Mercury is in the sun sign. There is awareness of something coming to the forefront, something that needs to get worked on. And it's coming through somewhere between Thursday and Friday. Guidance, information, documentation, rules, process, policies, procedures, a serving of certain documents, emails coming through. There's agreements coming into light somewhere between Thursday and Friday. Now, for some people, it's going to be based off of the new moon that just happened over the weekend. For other people, it's going to be based off of the Venus effect of the last few days. But there's something new coming into focus based off of this sextile. Now, there's another sextile that's really taking shape throughout the entire day. And it's almost exact right here. And it's a big part of the week as to like where we're feeling excitement, but where we're also feeling areas of nostalgia or the unknown, some mysticism. And that has to do with Neptune and Uranus. And I'm going to cover a little bit more of this in the closing. I didn't put a whole lot of emphasis on this in the beginning part because this outer planet vibration, their sextile is going exact for the very first time all afternoon going into the evening time. I'm not even kidding you. So this is going to start around 12:47 p.m. Central Standard Time. Got this now at 1:30. Here's Uranus, 1 degrees, 26 minutes. Here is Neptune, 1 degrees, 26 minutes. They're together. These two stay in a sextile all day long. It actually doesn't separate until 9:07 p.m. Central Standard Time. And this is the first sextile in a series of 3. We will have 2 more, one in November, specifically on November 20th, the third and final one, July 15th of 2026, 11 months away. It's a very specific vibration that is starting to take shape about one element of the new normal and kind of reaching a peak based off of Uranus of what one element of the new normal is going to be, because this is our last little bits of Uranus before Uranus turns retrograde. So it's our last little bits of getting some new things into the equation. And some people either not fully committing to something, not fully believing, or blindly believing in something that they've never done before, but it feels fun, it feels exciting, it feels hopeful. But sometimes Neptune can have to do with nostalgia. And there can be things that, again, have to do with that bleed over energy that I've already been talking about. For other people, it is going to have to do with lies, fraud, and deception. And I want you to be very aware that some of the conversations or some of the documentation as to what you're signing this week might not completely go to plan just because we're not seeing some element of it clearly. And that's the Neptune effect, because that's what Neptune does. He likes to blind our senses, he likes to blind our judgment. Oh, being blind to something can end up triggering some emotions for some people because the moon is still in Scorpio. But for a lot more people, it's not necessarily triggering emotions. It feels oddly balancing. And now I'm taking into effect that Mars is in Libra, and we don't have the same weighted depth of certain triggers. It's more balancing. And again, we've had so many little things come to light this week with Venus hosting that Mars, Uranus hosting Pluto, the other, Scorpio ruler, where the moon is at right now is in Scorpio. Some of us know we have to do certain things to finally overcome certain fears and overcome certain power dynamics. Outer planets are very, very different because they set long-term vibrations. And this is exactly that. All right, moving on. We're getting into the 29th. We're getting into Friday. The moon is going to be in Scorpio all day long, and it's not a heavy day transit-wise. It's actually pretty light. We get into the morning time between 6:30 and 8:30 a.m. I got it now at 7:30. Jupiter, 17 degrees, 25 minutes, is going to hit a trine to the moon, 1721 in Scorpio. So we're just a few minutes before the actual exact trine. This is water to water, emotion to emotion. But what I will also bring up is Jupiter is now at 17 degrees, and he is now crossing over the areas of the sky where Mars ended its retrograde back in February. And this again triggers that bleed over vibration that I was previously talking about. And what we will start to see in little bitty inklings, and I feel like we'll see one really quickly because the moon is in Mars' sign right as Jupiter crosses this area, that we can have something that goes all the way back to the Mars retrograde. So most specifically, when Mars was in Cancer, that was January and February, but Mars was still in Cancer March and April. So we got to go with the first 4 months of this year. There can be things that from earlier this year that we start to revisit, that we start to renegotiate on, that we start to redo, that we're starting to rethink, we're starting to revise. But this literally feels like the start of either a revision, a level up, or again, some of the communication or some of the things that we're committing to that we have hopefulness for. But it can also be kind of blind illusion because, again, we got a strong Neptune thing going on between Neptune and Uranus this week. Okay, we're not done yet. As the day progresses, Jupiter, again, in that trine to the moon, water to water, something is flowing. There's emotional understanding. There is consideration. Jupiter can be the doctor, the guru, the teacher. There can be guidance and lessons just as much as there can be prosperity and abundance and that level of support. This does feel like a supportive vibration in a lot of ways, even if we aren't seeing everything clearly. As the day progresses, the moon's still going to be in Scorpio, but in the evening time between 6:30 and 9 p.m., I gave a bigger window here, the moon is going to go through a square with Mercury. Now, again, I'm going to say the same thing that I said with Thursday's energy. Mercury and the sun are in mutual reception. They are in a house swap. So anything anything the sun is going through, Mercury is going through. Anything Mercury is going through, the sun is going through. And for some people, again, something came to light on Thursday that had levels of like negotiation or documentation or something that we needed to solidify. And some of us aren't going to be completely done with that conversation, or we won't have everything completely solidified until Friday. Some people, you'll be talking about a contract on Thursday morning, but you won't get the final e-signature. You're going to go back and forth with debate all the way until Friday evening. And by here, we're, addressing certain things, we're giving guidance with certain things, we're giving direction. Mercury in the higher authority of this square, giving direction to the moon, I'm thinking direction in the sense of like logic here, certain communication, certain steps forward, that level of direction, what steps to follow, what's the rules, the procedure, the adjustments in the procedure, the way we want something to go moving forward for a long standing period of time. Mercury hitting the square to the moon here. There is direction, there is guidance, there is an understanding with Mercury hitting that square to the moon. And again, this can go back to some of the internal reflections or the exciting news and change that was from the weekend, because that new moon was ruled by Mercury. It's been a very busy week for a lot of people. And there's a lot of new to this week, as much as the bleed over from the previous week. So be aware of all of that. All right, we're done with Friday. We're going to take our butts into Saturday. All through the overnight hours, the moon is going to be in Scorpio. But the thing about the moon in Scorpio is the moon is void. After that square from Mercury that happened on Friday evening, we don't have a whole lot going on. So the moon is void and it's just kind of doing its thing. This isn't a heavy energy night. It feels like we have the potential of some sleep. Now, what I will say is that once we get into the morning time, specifically between 8 and 10 a.m., it's going to pick up and things are going to get a little bit more rapid. At 9:04 a.m., so now I got this at 9:30, the moon is going to go into Sagittarius. Now, the moon is in Jupiter's sign, but Jupiter is also in Cancer. Jupiter's in the moon sign. So anytime we go through the moon going through one of Jupiter's signs, we enter mutual reception. But Sagittarius is very interesting with its mutual reception because it feels like indirect benefits. The thing about Cancer to Sagittarius is they don't see eye to eye. They're in a quincunx to one another. So anything that starts to benefit us, it's like benefiting us in a way that we did not anticipate. There's help, there's aid in ways that we didn't initially plan. Things that started to happen that wasn't a part of the initial process. And as soon as the moon goes into Sagittarius, it's going to hit a trine to Saturn, hit the opposition to Uranus, hit a trine to Neptune, a sextile to Pluto, boom, 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 boom. And it's very, very quick, but the moon in Sagittarius is very, very hopeful. It's very, very helpful. Now, the only thing I will bring up again is Jupiter has now crossed over into that previous point of shadow that impacts things from the Mars retrograde coming back up. And we had some real interesting Sagittarius stuff happen at the start of the Mercury retrograde last year. That would actually be December's time frame. So be aware that things from the last year in the bleed over inadvertently coming back around, or it being the inadvertent thing that has led us into the new that we're in right now, that if I had talked to you about it a year ago, we wouldn't have made all these dot connections. But now in some way, it's brought us here and we're like, how did that happen? But it's hopeful, it's energetic. The moon in Sagittarius has a lot of hopeful energy. There's a lot of fire energy in the air, and there's a lot of things that we are either trying to get wrapped up or we are trying to get going simultaneously, because there is, again, a lot of bleed over that is coming through the vibration this week, new and old simultaneously. And how good or bad that's going for you is different for everybody. So let's keep going. The moon is now in Sagittarius, and again, between 8 and 10 a.m. So while the moon is transitioning signs, the moon is going through its trine with Saturn. Saturn is now at 0 degrees, 7 minutes. He is now 2 days away from going back into Pisces. And the moon hitting this trine to Saturn can be an understanding of a responsibility shift, or an understanding of something getting done, an understanding that sometimes our boss is saying, like, we need to reevaluate some things from before. We need to take a step back and re-look at some things from before. We need to, it's not just reevaluate, it's repurpose, revise, rethink, reshape, I'm missing a word here. All the re's. Think of the re's. I apologize. The moon hitting that trine to Saturn between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. So got this now at 11:30. The moon is going to hit the trine to Neptune. You can see that right here. And it's going to hit that opposition to Uranus. Whatever connection was being made in the moon, not sorry, in the Uranus Neptune exact that was just a few days earlier, this feels like a repeat. This feels like a carryover. This feels like an extra step, an extra line tied to that vibration. And this can be where we tell somebody that exciting new thing that we're working on, the exciting new thing that we're going into, that we have all these high hope for. Even if they don't necessarily recognize or they don't necessarily understand it, we can be talking about the new that we're trying to set into motion and all the hopes that we're having for something. For some people, you're going to be hearing about something exciting and new. And like, there's also going to be like confusion around it of like, well, how's the pay structure on that work? Well, we're going to figure that out. Like, it's going to happen. It's just, we're going to just trust the process. Oh, okay. In other words, we don't know. Sometimes you can trust the process. Other times you can't do it quite that way. Now, when we get closer to that 1:30 time frame, so now I got it at 12:30, the moon is also going to enter its sextile to Pluto. So again, a lot of quick lunar energy very, very quickly. Pluto can have to do with the trauma, the abuse, the past, the power struggles, just as much as it can be about the transformation of something that we are working through, something we are transforming, something that we are trying to overcome. A lot of the harsh Plutonian stuff is kind of done for a little while. So I feel like we have a lot more of a solution-oriented vibration right here of, again, how we overcome something and just an understanding of overcoming. Actions to take based off of a logical need, a logical response. Again, there can be some bleed over to some prior stuff. There's a multitude of reasons why I say that. I'm not even going to keep going over them, but still we have these little things in that vibration can be like, old stuff coming back up just as much as new. And a lot of us, as we're going through the new, we have the bleed over of the old that has brought us to this new. Okay, moving along. After the moon hits the sextile to Pluto, that's going to be done roughly around that 1:30 mark, maybe just a few minutes after that. But really, the moon is going to be in Sagittarius. It's in a hopeful, outgoing, bountiful, outdoor type of energy. Once we get to the 9:30 to 11:30 time frame, so now I got it at 10:30, so I'm right in the middle. Venus is going to go through a trine to the moon. So fire right here. Venus is at 6 degrees 32 minutes. Here's the moon at 6 degrees 40 minutes. So we're just past the exact trine. There is results. There is hopefulness. There is passion. There's something that speaks to the appearance of certain things and how it's being perceived by others. Some of us are giving direction, but based off of appearance, like, well, if you really want it to work well, you should do XYZ 1, 2, 3, because it's going to look really pretty and it can be functional. And you can go in this route. Now, remember, again, the moon is in Jupiter's sign. They're in this quincunx to one another. And there can be these little things over the weekend that speak to like unintended or unexpected benefits, unplanned benefits. Sometimes you're going to go out to dinner and you're just going to have like meeting somebody and talking to them for a little while about the appearance of something, and it's going to be helpful. There's benefits even in ways that we had not necessarily anticipated. And this is a very visual moon in Sag, Venus in Leo type of benefit. Visual, aesthetically pleasing, pleasurable, hopeful type of vibration with Venus hitting the trine to the moon right here. All right, we're gonna keep this going. We're gonna get into the 31st. Hello, Sunday. The moon is going to be in Sagittarius all day long. Right after midnight, whenever we get into this 1:30 time frame, it's going to be felt the most exact between 12:30 and 2:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. I've got it now at 1:30. The sun is going to square the moon. We are now in the first quarter moon. As busy as this week has been, it's still been in a new moon vibration. It's after the quarter moon that we start to kick things up a notch because we're moving towards the full moon. But not only that, we're gearing up towards a full moon eclipse that's going to happen on September 7th. That full moon eclipse is going to also be in Jupiter's sign. This quarter moon, the moon is in Jupiter's sign. There is something in this energy that speaks to foreshadowing, that speaks to excitement, that speaks to advancement, that speaks to a push towards what we're building towards. And this is a very hopeful vibration. And some of the hopeful vibrations is even bringing things up inadvertently from the past that we didn't realize were going to benefit us now. It's like, man, I didn't realize that if I had sold my car back then, or I didn't realize that stock I bought or that crypto I bought or that thing that I got, 6 months ago was still going to help me now. That's the greatest freaking tool attachment I've ever played with. I didn't realize it was going to keep working for me. I didn't realize there was going to be a long-term benefit and a long-term effect, because sometimes we don't. But there is something that speaks to that long-term benefit and a long-term effect coming into our mind in this vibration. All right, we're going to keep this going. Now, again, there's not a whole lot of transits whenever it comes to Sunday. We're going to keep it going. We got, where's it at? All right. 2 things going on in the afternoon. One of them I just skipped. Right in that 3 p.m. time span, Chiron is going to hit a trine to Mercury. So you can see Chiron here, 26 degrees, 43 minutes. Here is Mercury at 26:41. Again, Chiron is a very neutral vibration. Mercury here is wrapping up its trip through Leo very quickly, moving forward. He's been here for a while, though, guys. We've got to remember, Mercury has been in Leo since June 30th. And he's sick of Leo. He's sick of the fire. He's sick of the passion. He's sick of this vibration. And he's wanting to move forward. But whenever it comes to Chiron's energy, Chiron is neutral. So some of us, the ideas, the passions, and the things that we're starting to go through right here is meant to be solution oriented. It's meant to be something that's helpful, how we overcome the past. Some of us are going to be talking and giving guidance to certain people in regards to like how something hurt you in the past, but it doesn't hurt you anymore. And it's like giving direction and giving an idea. The reason I'm giving that layer of things is because I'm also paying attention to the moon as it's entering its sextile from Mars. Now that's going to be felt more exact between 4 and 6 p.m. I got it now at 5:30. Here is Mars, 15 degrees, 52 minutes, hitting this sextile to the moon. Sextiles are of the nature of Venus. They're meant to be solution oriented. They're meant to be more of a guidance. They're meant to be more helpful. Chiron's still, in that trine to Mercury. There's a lot of hopeful healing solutions in the vibration going through Sunday. Is there a lot of like energy and activity? Absolutely. But sometimes by getting your energy out, that alone gives you the clarity. Like there's some people that I've had to teach you like different forms of meditation, because you can't just sit there and put your fingers together and go and be able to meditate. So I tell you all the time, like you need water meditation, you need active meditation. We have different forms of meditation that we go through. And this feels like active meditation gives a lot of guidance whenever it comes to Sunday. And some of us will be thinking back to things that go all the way to either last fall, that September timeframe, or into the spring timeframe, specifically that, February, March area, now that Jupiter is crossed over into Mars's point of shadow area, and it's starting to like bring up the next layer of certain things. And again, we have a lot of things here that speak to bleed over. And we are also at 5:30 p.m. we are also this final round. Saturn is at 0 degrees, 1 minute. He's not moving back today. He's going to move back the next day, but we are still in this vibration of like something is getting wrapped up. Something needs to come to an end. Something needs to come to a close. There's something we don't believe in the same way in a multitude of senses. Like there's just something here that speaks to a vibration very much mentally and emotionally shifting. Now, I don't mean this in the heaviest sense, but I feel like we have exciting new ideas, going back to the Uranus part, that we have a lot of hope for. We have a lot of belief towards. We have a lot of vibration that speaks to the potential. Now, whenever it comes to Neptune and Uranus, they are outer planets. They move a lot slower. Their sextile has been building for a while. It finally goes exact this week, but it's the first in the series of 3. And it is the other reason why I'm saying there's something very new about this week while also bleeding into the old. Whenever it came to the beginning of this episode, I focused more on the bleeding of where we're going to have old things kind of bleeding into the new. And a lot of the new is coming through with the Venus transit. But the bigger vibration that's also going on is that vibration between Neptune and Uranus. And there is the unexpected with Uranus. There is the technology with Uranus. There is the potential of something different and new whenever it comes to Uranus. And Neptune can either be the new excitement is based off of lies, fraud, and deception, Neptune. It is based off of belief, religious belief, spiritual belief, imagination levels of belief, creativity levels of belief. That's Neptune. For other people, there's going to be a fogging of senses. And this is what I didn't get too heavy on in the weekly stuff. Neptune has this way of coming through and fogging certain senses and dissolving them. And some people are going to see elements of that, but I don't think that we get the full dissolving effect with Neptune because Neptune is retrograde. I think we're going to be more focused on the potential with Uranus than we are the fogginess of Neptune. Now, we've got about a month and a half left of Neptune being in Aries. We are just a few weeks away from Uranus turning retrograde. So I mean it when I say that there is this potential in the vibration of doing something new right now, because Uranus is in these final moments of putting something new together. But if we don't get it committed too quickly, then it's not going to happen because Uranus will turn retrograde. And certain ideas of what seem very exciting right now will suddenly not feel exciting over the few weeks forward. And then there will be hesitancy and some people won't continue. So the idea is we need to get a commitment as soon as possible. If you don't get commitments, then be prepared that you weren't meant to do that yet. And again, we're going into an eclipse season that is going to be very, very transitional. Some people will do new things. Other people will have to deal with old things simultaneously. Some people will be building off of things that we already committed to once before, hoping for a solid foundation, while others are going to be reigniting, revising previous commitments. Because some of the people that got us to where we needed to be, they were only meant to be there for a season. But they're not there for the long term. They're not the big picture people. And some of us, that's exactly what our lives are like. When I first heard that, I went to a VOTech, like a career tech on top of high school. So I went to 2 schools simultaneously, my final years of high school. And one part of it was a business school. And when I first ever heard that, there are some people that all they do is specialize is going in, launching a business, getting it to peak capacity. And then as soon as we've reached the goals, they're done and they walk away. And it seemed so crazy to me at first. Like, why would you do all of that work just to walk away? Just for me to figure out I'm one of those people too. If it doesn't have some level of excitement and evolution and change, the long run is I'm not going to like it. I'm going to be miserable because I need the challenge. It's the mix of my Mars ruled individual with a lot of mutable in my chart. I need the challenge. There are going to be some people that you start to realize this week, they were there to help you rise to the occasion. They were there to help you through the challenge. But little triggers are going to start to come through, making you realize they're creating more chaos than helping us stay stable. And that's not an easy thing to deal with, because some people, once you commit to someone, you're very stuck on loyalty. And that's not sign specific. You want to be loyal to certain people. But I think there's going to be little things in the universe that start to make us question our loyalties. And that some people are not meant to continue. They were meant to help us get something going, get something heightened up, get something locked and loaded, get something opened, grand opening. But then once the challenge is over and it's doing the mundane Monday through Friday tasks of maintaining the business, that's where they struggle, is in the monotony. And what you'll see is these little triggers in people, letting them know that their time is served. Ironically enough, that's a Saturnian thing. And this is the last full week of Saturn being in Aries until next year, until he's ready to commit to something for the long term. It was a pinky toe dip. We're at the end of that pool season whenever it comes to Saturn. And the way we end this week is Saturn pulling back. The way we will start next month, next week, next month, same thing. September 1st is Monday. The way we start that energy is going to be in an old mindset while still being in new vibration, working through new ideas, expanding new horizons, but recognizing some of the people, some of the players, some of the topics, some of the agreements that got us to this point aren't fit to remain. Now, for some reason, fit is going to again have to do with health. And I again bring up the fact that you need to watch your elders this week. Anytime Saturn goes through harsh things, including changing signs, we get little things that start to impact their bodies. Saturn has to do with age. Saturn in Aries is trying to feel youthful, it's trying to feel capable, and it wants to rise to certain challenges. But some part of it is going to recognize, I don't have that same level of energy that I thought I had. And we will see things in our elders this week too, this week and next week, a transition in them as well that we are not necessarily anticipating. I feel like we're going to see more of it next week, like right at the start of next week, especially when the moon goes into Capricorn. I feel like we'll really feel and see a lot of it. But that human effect is, I think people are going to see it this week too, because Saturn is ending its trip. The transition is how we start the next week. But even in the gear up to transition, we're going to see the wear and tear. That some people aren't capable of continuing something. They're not fit. And I think we're going to see a lot of that too. Neptune has this way of blinding us with the potential. Neptune has been very blinding to Saturn. But what we will find is once Saturn is able to change signs and go back into Pisces, the effects of something will have a very different mental, emotional, and physical vibration on a lot of people. But it doesn't take away from everything we've built. A lot of us have been taking steps into a new normal for months now. We were supposed to take those steps, but a lot of us took those steps because we landed in something very new and foreign, and we had no choice but to rebuild. Going off of the very old analogy, we came off a waterfall, plunged into the water. Once we got into May, it's like we gasping for air, going, okay, what now? What now? Where am I at? How'd I get here? What now? And there's a lot of things that speak to kind of a what now. But some of us, we made the best of what we could do while still working with people that were from the prior vibration, or they were a part of the three-legged potato sack race of us getting attached to people we weren't normally attached to in that early springtime part of this year. And I'm literally meaning January, February, March. And now that we're further along and we're out of the volatile energy, we're starting to see that person differently. And the hope is that maybe we can see them in a better light. Maybe they can level up. Maybe they're going to be more capable. And you have to sometimes give space for someone to try to level up. But for other people, it's not really a level up. It's a test. And we will have as much as the new that we've got going on. We're going to have the bleed overs of the past, testing just how strong this weaved basket in time is. Some of us are going to have to make some repairs. Some of us are going to have to replace some pieces. Some of us are going to be realizing by going slow and steady, we did everything we needed to do just that right way. And you're going to realize sometimes the tortoise won the race for a reason. Watch for the bleed overs, watch the transition, watch the elements of new and old simultaneously showing themselves this week. And this will be the first week for a while that we're going to see like the constant bleed over, because I feel like we're going to see all of it through September too. That transitional energy of we need the new and the old simultaneously, the old so we can recognize where we need to let go of certain things, but the new so that way we can continue strengthening and reinforcing what our new normal is going to be in 2026. It is a very curious week, and I'm hoping for the best. All right. I love and appreciate every single one of you. Hit me up with questions, hit me up with concerns. I'll talk to everybody very, very soon. Subscribe.